The wedding coordinator's clipboard shook in her hand. "Sir, we have a problem. Someone needs to say something to that child, and I don't know who to do it." Every eye in the ballroom had turned toward the tiny girl standing alone by the cake table, her yellow dress too big, her small hands folded like she was praying. Nobody had noticed her walk in. Nobody knew whose daughter she was. And in less than 60 seconds, the richest man in the room would ask her to do something no one expected. Her name was Lily Carter, and she was 3 years old. She had wandered away from the kitchen entrance of the Magnolia Grand Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina, drawn by the music and the lights. Her mother, Renee, worked in the hotel's catering staff, folding napkins and carrying trays for weddings she could never afford to attend herself. Renee had told Lily 100 times to stay in the back hallway. But tonight, Lily had slipped past the swinging doors, pulled toward the sound of a string quartet like a moth toward a porch light. She stood near the dessert table, staring at the tiered cake as if it were a castle. Guests in tuxedos and silk gowns glanced at her, then looked away, embarrassed for whoever had let a child wander in unsupervised. A few whispered. One woman in pearls muttered to her husband that someone should call security. Nobody smiled at Lily. Nobody asked if she was lost. She simply stood there, small and forgotten, while champagne glasses clinked around her like she didn't exist. Then a deep voice near the head table went quiet. Daniel Whitfield, 34 years old, was the groom's business partner and, according to Forbes, worth over $2 billion. He'd built a tech company from a garage in Austin and rarely attended events like this anymore. He came only because the groom, Marcus, had once been his college roommate, the only friend who'd believed in him before the money came. Daniel usually kept to himself at parties, checking his phone, counting the minutes until he could leave. But something about the little girl by the cake made him stop scrolling. He watched her for a long moment. She wasn't crying. She wasn't asking for help. She was simply humming, softly, to herself, swaying a little to the music nobody else seemed to hear the same way she did. "Whose kid is that?" he asked the man next to him. Nobody answered. Nobody knew. The wedding planner rushed over, flustered, ready to usher Lily out through the service door before the bride noticed. That was when Daniel stood up. "Wait," he said. "Don't move her yet." The room quieted. Guests turned. Marcus, the groom, looked over from the dance floor, confused. Daniel walked toward the little girl, crouched down so they were eye level, and asked her name. "Lily," she whispered. "Lily," he repeated. "That's a pretty name. Do you like music?" She nodded, shy, gripping the edge of her dress. "Can you sing for me?" The room went still. A few guests laughed under their breath, assuming this was some kind of joke, a rich man humoring a lost child before handing her off to security. The bride's mother frowned from her table, clearly annoyed that the spotlight had shifted away from her daughter's big night. But Lily didn't laugh. She didn't run. She looked up at Daniel with her wide brown eyes, took a small breath, and began to sing. It was a lullaby. Simple, unpolished, a little off-key in the way only a 3-year-old's voice can be. But something about it stopped every conversation in that ballroom. Servers froze mid-step. The string quartet lowered their bows. Even the bride, in her white dress, turned fully around to watch. Because the song Lily was singing, the exact melody, the exact words, was one Daniel hadn't heard in 26 years. Not since his own mother used to sing it to him before she passed away, back when they lived in a 2-room apartment with no heat in the winter. His hands trembled. His eyes filled before he could stop them. "Where did you learn that song?" he asked quietly, when she finished. "My mommy," Lily said. "She sings it when I can't sleep." "Who is your mommy?" Before Lily could answer, a woman came rushing through the service doors, panic on her face, an apron still tied around her waist. "Lily. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, sir, she must have wandered off, I only turned my back for a second." Daniel stood slowly, staring at the woman's face like he'd seen a ghost. "Renee," he said. The woman stopped. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. 26 years ago, before the money, before the company, before any of it, an 8-year-old boy named Daniel had lived down the hall from a girl named Renee in a rundown apartment building in Columbia. Her mother used to babysit him after school while his own mother worked double shifts at the hospital. Renee used to sing him that same lullaby when the lights went out and the heat didn't work. They'd lost touch after his mother died and he was sent to live with relatives out of state. He never forgot her kindness. He'd simply never known how to find her again. "You're the little boy from Sumner Street," Renee whispered, tears rising in her eyes. "And you're the girl who never let me go to bed scared," Daniel said, his voice breaking. The whole ballroom watched in silence as two lives, separated by decades and circumstance, found each other again through the voice of a 3-year-old child who had wandered into a room where she supposedly didn't belong. Daniel didn't make a speech. He didn't need to. He simply knelt down again, took Lily's small hand, and said, "Thank you for singing for me." Then he looked at Renee. "I owe your family more than money could ever repay. Let me start by making sure Lily never has to stand in a corner unnoticed again. Not here, not anywhere." By the end of that night, Renee wasn't clearing tables. She was sitting at the head table beside her daughter, invited by Marcus and his bride to stay for the rest of the celebration as honored guests. And Daniel, the billionaire who rarely smiled at parties, spent the evening on the floor beside a little girl in a yellow dress, letting her teach him the second verse of a song he thought he'd lost forever. Sometimes the smallest voice in the room is the one that changes everything. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who still believes kindness can change the world. We'd love to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below.